Welcome and hello. This is a video tutorial on HEC ResSim, and in this lesson, I'm going to describe tandem operation rules and prescribed release rules. All right, so on the screen here, I have my reservoir network. What I have is two reservoirs in series along the same stream alignment. The upstream reservoir is reservoir 1, and then downstream of that is reservoir 2. Let's go ahead and right click on reservoir 1, the upstream reservoir, and then click edit reservoir properties. All right, here we have our reservoir editor dialog box. Over on the physical tab, I've got my pool and dam. The dam has a controlled outlet, uncontrolled outlet, and power plant. Over on the operations tab, I've created an operation set and then set up some zones as well as a few rules as part of zone B. So let's go ahead and stick with that. We're going to start with the tandem operation rules, and then after that, I'll talk about the prescribed release rules. To add a rule, specifically a tandem operation rule, right click on the zone that we want to add that rule to, and then click add new rule. Here we have the dialog for adding a new rule. I'm going to go ahead and name it tandem, and then the release type will be the reservoir. Reservoir is the only element that supports the tandem operation rule, and there it is. I should probably first mention that the tandem operation rule establishes a tandem system operation in which an upstream reservoir operates for a downstream reservoir to achieve a storage balance. That's the whole point of creating two reservoirs in the network for this lesson. The tandem operation rule is created and included in the operation set at the upstream reservoir only, and hence that's why we're working on reservoir 1. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, click OK, and here is our edit screen. It's a relatively simple edit screen. Basically, all we have to do is select the downstream reservoir. So we have the rule name, the rule description, if we want to type something in there, and then the reservoir that's downstream from the selected reservoir that we want to operate in tandem for that storage balance goal. So I'm going to go ahead and click reservoir 2 and then click apply. And I'm also going to name this rule tandem, and I'll just say with reservoir 2 as a little bit more of a description. Of course, there's only two reservoirs, but it could get more reservoirs in the network, and that a name like that would be helpful. Also worth mentioning, the tandem reservoir rule is currently at the bottom of the rule stack, meaning it's the lowest priority, and that's probably where we want it. It's an aggressive rule. It's a specific rule, so it's not a max or a min. There's an actual specific value tied to it, which means we want to allow the other rules to take precedence over the tandem rule. All right, so the second rule I want to discuss in this video is the prescribed release rule. Let's go ahead and add that by right-click on zone, add new rule. Now, the prescribed release rule is a rule that tells the reservoir how to operate in a specific time window to achieve a specific objective. So I'm going to type in prescribed release as my name, and then we can choose any of the elements: reservoir, dam, controlled outlet, power plant, any of the elements I have here at least. See, if I select reservoir, prescribed release is down here at the bottom. If I select controlled outlet, prescribed release is this one. So let's go ahead and actually select dam, and I'll show you why in a moment. And then this is going to be prescribed release, and we click OK. Now what we have is a table which has no rows in it to start, but we're going to go ahead and add those specific objectives in rows in this table. So we click append row, or you can insert a number of rows. Either way is fine, to give ourselves a new row. Next, we have to define the start date time, the end date time, the actual operation, and then the value that's associated with that operation or operator. So we'll just make up some numbers here. The start date time, you can double click into the field, and then you can click the ellipse button, or if you just double click again, you'll get the date time picker. I'll say Monday 8 a.m. Okay, that's the start. And then for the end, I'll say the next day, which is Tuesday, and I'll say 5 p.m. This is military time, so 1700 represents 5 p.m. Then for operator, here are our options. There's a lot of options, and that's partially because I selected DAM as the element associated with this rule. If you select controlled outlet or reservoir, or power plant, there's just a different list here, some of which are the same, but I believe DAM has the most options. And you can read the user's manual to get a exact definition of what each of these means. I think some of them are pretty straightforward, like hold gate, hold release, release the percentage of the inflow, release the inflow plus a delta, and so on. So let me go ahead and just select release a percentage of the inflow. What this means is we are releasing the amount that the reservoir gets in inflow plus a certain percentage. So if we wanted to release the inflow plus 20%, then we would type in 120% there. If we wanted it to be like less than the inflow, we could say something like 80%. So that's how that works. We could add additional rows as well by appending a row, and we can delete we use these buttons to just manage the specific objectives. But let me add a couple more. How about release inflow plus delta? So what this would be is if we wanted to change the storage of the reservoir, we could set the release equal to the inflow plus a delta value, such as in units of CFS, maybe an additional 200 CFS. I'm just making up numbers. Well, anyway, your reservoir will have specific objectives, and you can definitely use these prescribed release rules to um, attain those objectives within the specified date time range. All right, so let me just go ahead and move this prescribed release rule up to the top because we want it to be above the tandem rule. Remember, that's a specific rule. So let's go right click and we can click increase priority to move it up one, or we can right click and say move to top, and that would move it to the very top of the rule stack and hence be the top priority. All right, well, that's all I had to say to describe and introduce the idea of the tandem rule as well as the prescribed release rule in ResSim.